It's official. Jay Lucas will be the head coach of Miami. It looks like he will leave after the North Carolina game this Saturday and officially become the head coach for the Miami Hurricanes, taking over full time from Jim Larinaga. I think it's a big win for Miami. I think Jay Lucas is a great coach. He's been the lead recruiter and defensive coordinator for Duke the past 3 years, and it's something we knew was going to happen. It's definitely not the way we hoped it would happen, leaving basically in the middle of the season. I understand Miami season is over, and in part because of the transfer portal opening on March 24th, so they need him in place to be able to handle all of that. But JD, what are your initial takeaways, from Coach Lucas moving on to be the head coach at Miami?
So I initially said he's not leaving. He's going to see this through to the championship game. And I think time and time again, you have shown me that I come from a different era where I might have thought about it as a fan. And Jay Lucas is so much part of this team. And don't you want to be there or do it? And then you would say, wait a minute, there's a business side to this. And so his need as the head coach for Miami and to get that moving again, their last game is on Saturday, and they want him there for many business reasons, which I think you'll go into now.
Right, and it's not the only program that has their next head coach in place. Utah, just before we started recording this, hired their head coach, who was the assistant for the Dallas Mavericks. He is now going to be the head coach at Utah. So, because of the transfer portal date, it seems like teams are getting ahead of it. Like Utah fired their coach a few weeks ago. So, it seemed like they wanted to be able to get the first crack at who they wanted to pick from rather than some guys pick their schools earlier. And I think the same thing happened with Miami. And my assumption is that they said to Coach Lucas, if you want to be the head coach here, this is when you've got to start. And he didn't have, once he decided that's what he wanted to do, he didn't have control over the timeline, is my guess. It's something we may never actually know. But it could come out, in a few months' time or a year or so where we find out what the actual timeline was here. Because obviously we've known this was going to happen for about a month. We just didn't know when it was going to happen. Uh, Miami is a program which has been widely reported. They have a lot of money. They have good boosters. They should be able to get like Nigel Pack was a big transfer they got a couple years ago. It was widely documented. He got a good amount of NIL money to come over to Miami. They have the resources to help Coach Lucas do a quick rebuild. I think there's a world where if he gets the right transfers in place, they have a similar rebound to what Louisville was able to do this season under Coach Kelsey, because Jay Lucas is a tremendous coach and he's a great recruiter. And we know he can find talent in the transfer portal. He was the guy credited for finding Sion James, and we know how important he's been for Duke this season. So I think Miami's in great hands. It's certainly bittersweet though. Happy for Jay Lucas, but the timing is terrible as a Duke fan.
Especially since I proudly proclaimed that we're going on a 10-game winning streak and cutting down the championship nets, and one shining moment is going to feature Duke. Um, there are, as sitting next to Coach Shire, there are moments in each game where the key assistants are going to go, wait, look what's happening on the court there. I think we should make an adjustment. And with Jay Lucas being the defensive coordinator in a team that plays lockdown defense, um, I'm not going to revisit since all the personnel is still there, but it's sure tough to lose one of your key assistants. I mean, uh, it's like a baseball team losing their pitching coach, as they're heading into the playoffs and everyone thinks they're going to win, except that's the guy that says, no, we need that lefty coming in at this moment or this thing. It it's bittersweet, because I played under Jay Lucas for 10 games. And I'm sure you'll post a couple of photographs. And he's a terrific coach at the K Academy, though he was not undefeated, but the opposite of that. He didn't win a game my year, but he was a great coach. He was fun to work with, and just a great person. I really enjoyed my time with him, and look, Jack, it's like there's one extreme, which is I'm staying through the championship run. I helped build this team. And it's kind of a funny thing that he was considered at Kentucky to be the number 2 recruiter among coaches in the United States. And number 1 was Jon Scheyer. And Jon Scheyer says, hey, why don't we work together on this? And it has created some really enormous things. So one side of it is he should have seen it through. The other side of it is he's leaving now, and when the transfer portal opens up, and Jack, you've mentioned before, that just shouldn't happen until after the tournament. And then maybe there's somewhere in between, which is what you were talking about. Jay Lucas might have said, I'd like to see this out, but Miami said, no, if you want to come coach here, you're leaving now.
And I think that Miami put some pressure on Coach Lucas to do this earlier, just based off of how this story has unfolded, where they leak. Duke certainly didn't leak that Coach Lucas, was going to take this position, and it was leaked just around the Illinois game, which was 2 days before the Miami game. And so I think that they knew who they wanted, and once they got him to agree to a verbal agreement, they started to put a little bit of pressure on him to leave at this time. I think it's one of those things for Coach Lucas where I'm sure he, almost no matter what happens for Duke, he'll have a little bit of regret. If Duke goes on to win the national championship, he'll be happy, that he was a part of it and he was the person who recruited a few of, the Duke players, namely Cooper Flagg. And as you said, the defensive coordinator, it's been one of the top 3 to 5 defenses in the country all year. But he wouldn't be around for the run. And even if Duke were to not win it all, there might be a part of him that thinks, maybe if I was there, I could have helped with X or Y. And on the other side, if things work out great for him at Miami, it could easily be something where he looks back on a couple years from now and he says, it was really tough decision, but it was the best thing, for me at the time. And I think both things could end up being true. I think Duke, as you said, they're going to have to figure out the recruiting. I'm sure they'll be okay. There will be recruiting battles, though, with Jay Lucas moving forward, and that will be fun to see how that plays out. But putting that to the side for right now, focusing on this season, because this has been a special season for Duke basketball, it's about who is going to take up which assistant coach, whether that's Carrawell or Coach Avery or Coach Dildy or maybe, Justin Robinson. Like, who's taking up the mantle as the defensive coordinator for Duke? And I don't know if we'll ever know that, but it's something that certainly they've been discussing, I'm sure, in the past few weeks in terms of how they want to handle this moving forward. And at least to try to spin this into a positive, there will be a little bit of time where they'll have until the ACC tournament, 4 or 5 days 4 days where they can kind of figure out how they want to manage it. And then there will be another break before the NCAA tournament where they can again try to make some adjustments based off of what happened at the ACC tournament.
Look, turnabout is fair play. Maybe there's an announcement of a new assistant coach for Duke now. Someone who knows, a former Duke player, knows the Duke mentality, great team, great position to come into because they're going to make a tournament run. How much fun would that be? I think the Boozer twins will keep their commitment to Duke. So how much fun would it be to come and now be part of it? And it could be one of the Duke assistants who, I don't know which one at the moment, but could be a way to do it. But let's go back to Jay Lucas. I mean, when he started coaching, he began with Rick Barnes at the University of Texas. And so Rick Barnes, fabulous coach. Barnes leaves, and then Shaka Smart, one of our favorite coaches, especially at tournament time, comes in and says, "Oh no, I'd like you to stick around." And then it's a couple of years later that John Calipari at Kentucky says, "No, I'd like you to come here." And that's where Jay Lucas made his mark for recruiting. And it was then a year or two later that Jon Scheyer says, "Hey, if I'm the number one recruiter and you're the number two recruiter, why don't you come to Duke?" And it has been a very, very good arrangement ever since then.
And if you enjoyed this video so far, please give us a like. The only other thing I wanted to add, I thought you made a good point about, I'm not sure if they'll hire an assistant coach right now, but I think if I was an assistant coach in college basketball and a good recruiter, I would look at what happened with Coach Lucas at Duke and say, I want to go there because that's going to set me up to be a head coach somewhere pretty good and put me in a good spot. And so I don't know who that person is. Like you, I only knew, Coach Lucas and Coach Scheyer were the number 1 and 2 recruiters. I don't know who was 3, 4, and 5. No idea. But if I was that person and my current situation may not be so great, I would be giving Coach Scheyer a call and saying, "Hey, don't fill that spot just yet. I'm very interested in coming over to join you with the Duke Blue Devils."
I think Coach Scheyer's phone is ringing or whatever, beeping or whatever a cell phone does. I think there are multiple people trying to say. So I would look within the Duke family because Coach Jay Lucas was the first assistant hired who wasn't in the Duke family in 30 years. 30 years, the first assistant to not be part of it. So if I would first look for who is out there that's done a credible job somewhere, is in the Duke family, and that Scheyer either knows from playing with him or, someone younger, because it's got to be someone who could adjust to the whole new NIL portal, the whole way in which, as you were saying before we recorded, you're piecing together basically a one-year team. It's the way that college basketball is now.
Certainly. And we shall see. I think there's actually a chance it's outside of the Duke Brotherhood because not only was Jay Lucas hired from outside, but also just this past season, Coach Dildy was not from the Duke Brotherhood. So two of the, at this point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 coaches, assistants, 2 of the 6 not from Duke, which is very unusual based off of, as you said, the past 30 years. With that, please subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Let us know what you guys think about the Jay Lucas situation and share it with your Duke basketball friends. We will see you guys definitely post game after the North Carolina game, which turns out to be Coach Lucas's last game with Duke. Until then, peace.